with a less expensive haircut. Huckabee is about compassion. Huckabee thinks he's compassionate. He wants to be compassionate. He could be the second coming of Jimmy Carter, by the way. He scares me more than anyone running for the Republican nomination, bar none. And this is saying a lot. He scares me more than McCain. He scares me more than Giuliani. Because I think Huckabee is sincere. I think Huckabee will end up expanding government because it's the compassionate thing to do. He'll end up raising taxes because it's the compassionate thing to do. He'll end up pushing amnesty because it's compassionate. He'll end up fighting English because it's compassionate, and so on. Here's a guy who has turned compassion, which is an important Judeo-Christian concept, into just a mushy sentimentality, but he's high on it.
Exactly.
And that's what makes him so dangerous.
Yeah, what you're looking at with Huckabee is someone who reads the gospel to say, if I raise your taxes, I'm doing God's work. And he listens to others about as well as John McCain. So it's going to be a problem.
Don,
it's amazing. It's amazing, by the way, that there are all of these evangelical Christians supporting him, because all they see is the fact that he's a Southern Baptist minister, he's pro-life, and he's pro-marriage, and they look no further, and they don't know that on 90% of the other issues, he's dead set against them.
Well, an evangelical Christian I know, Don, said that she's supporting Huckabee because she wants Americans to pray more. Well, if he gets in office, people will be praying, all right. Oh, God, don't let me raise my taxes again.
Yeah, they'll be praying. They'll be offering virgin sacrifices. They'll be, doing whatever they can to to forestall disaster. Another big issue is the war on terrorism. How can we fight a war on terrorism when we have allies like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, when we're fighting for democracy in Iraq, and we're creating a new terrorist state out of Israel? I mean, the so-called Palestinian state. What kind of consistency is that? I mean, how can you say you're fighting terrorism while you simultaneously run around saying Islam is the religion of peace?
It's very peaceful. It's incredibly peaceful.
Like they say on the tombstones, R.I.P. Rest in peace. It's very peaceful in that regard. No, if you're going to be serious, there's no sense in seeing our men and women in arms die in Iraq if everywhere else you're fighting a phony war on terrorism. We make declarations to Iran. We're giving the Palestinians, who are the worst terrorists on earth, by the way, they're the mothers and fathers of modern terrorism, we're giving them their own state, which they're going to use to destroy the rest of Israel. We're allied with Pakistan, and granted, Musharraf is probably the best we can do there. But look, Musharraf is playing a double game. Al-Qaeda operates openly in Pakistan. I mean, if people are cynical about the Bush war on terrorism, it's understandable. There's just no consistency. The economy, nobody's talking about cutting taxes, really, or those who aren't talking about cutting spending. For Republicans, Republicans can always say, I'll cut taxes and get an applause line. Who's talking about cutting spending? And
Don? I was just wondering, can we take a question from one of our most loyal listeners, Ralph in Rochester?
Absolutely.
Ralph, you there?
Yes, I am, Joe. Thanks very much.
By the way, I grew up not far from Rochester.
No kidding.
I grew up in a little town in the Adirondacks called Johnstown, New York, which, if I'm not mistaken, is about an hour and a half from Rochester.
That's just about it. Dan, it's good to hear your voice again, and good to speak with you again. But this Thompson guy, I really have a high regard for him, and I don't understand why he isn't doing better. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
please?
Sure. I have a high regard for Fred Thompson too. Fred Thompson is the only candidate on the Republican side whose record actually matches his rhetoric. He's not saying one thing now where he was doing something else 4 or 5 years ago.
Right on.
Everyone I've spoken to in Washington says on all the issues conservatives care about, Fred Thompson had a great record on abortion, on taxes, on national security and defense. Fred Thompson had an excellent record, made a few mistakes, voted against removing Clinton from office, but, everybody makes mistakes here and there. On the whole, had a phenomenal record. The problem is, I'm not sure that Fred Thompson wants to be president, or if he does, he doesn't want it enough. He's just not running like someone who wants the job. And, if you're an employer, you're interviewing someone for a position, you want to see some enthusiasm. You want the guy who comes in there and says, I'm the right man for this job, and I'm going to tell you why, and this is what I'll do if you give me this job. And Fred Thompson isn't doing that. Fred is just, kind of laid back. Whenever he speaks, his comments are intelligent, but there just isn't any passion there.
Yeah, I wish somebody'd build a fire under him and get him going, because I think he'd make a good one. Thank you, Don.
I think his seat may be made of asbestos. I'm not sure. I'm not sure you're going to build a fire under Fred Thompson.
Don, I have a question. What about Duncan Hunter?
Is Hunter still in the race?
As far as I know.
I'd heard he dropped out. Okay. Well, Duncan Hunter's a great guy. Tom Tancredo was a great guy. They're not going to get the nomination. That's a given. Somebody who's never broken out of a single digits in any opinion survey is not going to get the nomination. Now, Ron Paul, single digits. On the other hand, I think Ron Paul is clinically insane. But in terms of Duncan Hunter, yeah, great guy. If you could pick someone and make him president of the United States, you could do a lot worse than Duncan Hunter. The problem, of course, is that Duncan Hunter doesn't have a snowball's chance, where, of being the next president of the United States.
Can we go back to national security for
Absolutely.
just a moment? There was a firing this week of a Defense Department official for being too anti-Islamic. And I wondered, my memory doesn't go back to World War II, but do we ever fire people from the Defense Department during World War II for being too anti-Japanese?
Not to the best of my knowledge. If FDR had run World War II the way George W. Bush is running the war on terrorism, he would have done one of his famous fireside chats, and he would have said, "My fellow Americans, Nazism is an ideology of brotherhood. There are all of these bad Nazis out there like Hitler and Himmler and Goring and Goebbels. They're the radical Nazis. They're the militant Nazis. But I'm not going to say anything against Nazism per se." Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
That's George Bush on Islam. Islam is a religion of peace. Condi Rice, who's even softer upstairs, called it a religion of peace and love.
That is soft.
Maybe, like the old song goes, you always hurt the one you love. So, given the number of people who were hurt by Islam, maybe it is the religion of love. Who knows? No, I just think the way Bush has been handling the war on terrorism is a travesty, and it's sad because there are good, idealistic young men and women who are dying in Iraq, who are trying to defend their country, and they need more support than this.
Don, thanks an awful lot for joining us here on The Right Hour. We certainly appreciate your time and your observations, and we hope you'll come back and see us again soon.
I look forward to it, Joe.
Thank you very much.